Lynn Taylor, and Lynn is, as I said before, president of Taylor Protocols, and Lynn has performed more than 200 successful turnarounds over the past 20 years of his career and work with over 700 companies, which is extremely impressive. He really, beyond that, is one of the leading speakers at Vistage, which is the world's largest CEO membership organization, and I'm familiar with Vistage, and they do a lot of great things, which is really great to see. And in addition, Lynn has worked with more than 2,000 executives in his leadership, coaching, and training role as president of Taylor Protocols. And I think the thing that's of equal interest, if not more so, is that Lynn really uses a scientific approach and scientific method to develop top performer profiles, and really what that's all about. And really, you're looking at the science, and he really, I think, has really developed this new science of employee pre-selection, and really what a success look like in a particular company and a particular culture for a particular job. And that has lots of implications, of course, for coaching, and coaching well, as we might imagine. So I think with that brief introduction, Shannon, I'm going to pass over to you the virtual microphone, and then we'll get right into it.
Thank you very much, Marshall.
There you go.
Well, welcome this evening, or good morning to those of you who are in other time zones. My name is Shannon Wallace. I have been affiliated with CoachSource since 2007 in one way, shape, or form. First as a buyer of CoachSource services, and more recently as a coach in their coaching pool. I just wanted to let you know that originally this call was going to be handled by another CoachSource Connect member. She had a family emergency, and I am filling in for her, but I am actually on vacation in Mexico. And this morning when we ran the call, I had a little bit of audio trouble, so I'm hoping that won't happen, but I wanted just to make you aware of it in case it comes up. Fortunately, Lynn will do most of the speaking this evening. But I want to tell you a little bit about my experience both as a coach and then as a buyer of coaching services. So I started my career over 20 years ago in consulting. My consulting background has been in strategy, organizational change, and in the past 15 years more around leadership development. And I left Microsoft 2.5 years ago as the global director of high potential leadership development, where I was privileged to buy CoachSource coaching services, and that's how I got to know Brian Underhill and Steve Sass. And more recently, I've become a member. After I decided to go back into independent consulting, I joined CoachSource and then CoachSource Connect. And in the past year, I've been working with this tool called the Core Values Index, and I have loved it so much that I wanted to introduce more coaches, and I thought the CoachSource Connect platform would be a good way for coaches to become more educated on a tool like this. What I love about the Core Values Index, and I hope most of you have taken it by now, is that the focus on it is to enable people to make their highest and best contribution. And Lynn Taylor, that is the focus of his work. It is a tool that he has used in many different formats. For us as coaches, it enables us in those moments when we intervene with people, when people are struggling in their jobs because either they don't like it, it's not the right fit, they are struggling because they don't know, they're using the same behaviors but not getting any kind of different results, but don't know how to make the mindset shift or behavioral shifts. The Core Values Index enables people to it enables us as coaches to get into their human operating system, to look at the energies that truly drive them, enable them to not only know when to utilize all of those energies most appropriately, but to also integrate the ones that they're not using and they could get more energy from, more ways to be more impactful and effective. Now, ultimately, that's how I use it as a coach. I use it both, and I'll talk about that a little later. I use it both in individual coaching, more so for me in team development work. And Lynn has taken it to the next level where he works a lot with companies in their hiring practices. So, you know, ultimately as coaches, we start working with people when they're struggling. They're not happy in their job. Maybe they don't fit in the job. Maybe somebody's called us in. Lynn is working to get the right people in the right jobs from the get-go so that people can make their highest and best contribution. what I've really loved about the tool itself is that, we're always looking for something new in coaching. In the past 3 to 4 years, neuroscience has been the hot topic, and it's very effective with leaders. They like getting into the neuroscience of how their behavioral shifts happen. It makes us more credible. The nice thing about the Core Values Index is it's the kind of tool, and you'll hear this from Lynn, and it was one of the reasons I was attracted to the tool, and Lynn in particular, is because of the science behind it. So I am certified in many other assessment instruments, such as Hogan, HBDI, MBTI, you name it, multiple 360 instruments. This is the first one that I'm working with that has a 94% repeat reliability. And that's very important to me in terms of when I want to use an assessment with a client to say, I feel that the science behind this is very strong. I feel that when we're working with it, we can, you're going to take it in 5 years, you're going to get the same result. So you should feel very confident that this is going to, this is really going to get at some underlying issues that you may have. And I'm going to share some stories about some clients and the work that I've done with them a little later. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. The way we're going to run this is Lynn's going to first tell you a little bit about his background. He didn't just start in the area of leadership development. He came to it through kind of a circuitous route. He's going to talk a little bit about his background, the instrument itself, and some of the science behind it. And then he's going to debrief the CVI. So for those of you who've already taken it, it will make a lot more sense to you. For those of you who haven't yet taken it, please send me an email, and I will get the link to you later, and then you can take it. But he will spend some time debriefing it. After he debriefs the CVI and how it can be used, then I'm going to talk about how we use it as coaches and how I've used it with teams. And then I'll turn it back over to Lynn to talk about, if you're interested in getting certified, what does it mean to be a value-added relationship partner with Taylor Protocols, and then how he's used it with other companies, because this would be something you'd be interested in when you have clients who are struggling. We work with a lot of HR people, and they have multiple needs, and this area of hiring, getting the right person in the right job in the first place is important to many of our clients. So being aware of how it can be used, I think, is really important. And then we'll follow it up with about 20 minutes of Q&A, but feel free to answer questions as we go along. So I'm going to turn it over now to Lynn. Like I said, Lynn is going to tell you a little bit about his background. When I learned about Lynn's background, it made me even more confident in the tool. And that's why I appreciate the science. So thank you very much for being on the call this evening, and I'll introduce Lynn Taylor.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Appreciate that very much. And good evening, good morning, everyone, wherever you are in this world. The internet is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Connects us all. So we'll try to keep you wide awake if you're up past your normal bedtime. I feel privileged always to talk to a group of coaches. I really admire and appreciate the work that coaching world does, and I'm proud to say that the CVI is being received as a new standard for best practice coaching, and I'll tell you why that's the case as I go forward here in a few minutes. I have, as Shannon said, a circuitous route to get where I am. The last 20 years I spent being a titular CEO, mostly of companies that were in extreme financial distress. I and my partners typically were managing 8 to 12 companies at the same time, and we were successful in turning around over 200 different businesses, bringing them from the edge of disaster to robust health and moving forward. And the primary reason is the Core Values Index and what we now call the Taylor Protocols, the way to use the CVI to put every person in the right seat doing the right work. And so what I will share with you a little bit is about how this came to be. We want to take a look at how the CVI was created, because there is a methodology and a science to it that's very important. Let me start back a little ways and say that my early career was working in medical diagnostic imaging from the technical and product side and marketing and sales. And I first created with Dr. Ed Geiger in Gainesville, Florida, the world's first non-invasive cardiac output computer, which was cardiology ultrasound signals saved on video tapes, very noisy signals, and we shot the picture of the heart from 2 different angles, and I developed the algorithms, pattern recognition and pattern matching algorithms that would track the edge of the left ventricle through 60 frames of video tape and automatically do that, and from 2 different angles, and then the algorithm tried to discern how much blood was being pumped out by the heart that was looking at. And we became the most effective way of gauging whether or not a person needed open heart surgery, more accurate than even the more invasive units like the nuclear ultrasound, nuclear radiography. So that process, and then later on my work to create the world's first IBM-compatible speech recognition system, were where I learned how to use computer and data processing to find patterns and to be able to recognize them again. And that now is the core of our right person, right seat algorithms and methodology. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later on this evening. But that came to, those 2 worlds came together, my ultrasound signal world and my turnaround management world, when I started getting some clients back that we had turned around 6 months or a year or 2 years earlier, and they were about in the same bad shape as they were when I got there, including the fact that we had many times hired what we thought was going to be a new superstar, a new top performer for the company. And I was more disappointed in the people that I had helped hire than my clients were. I realized that I was really bad at choosing right people and knowing whether they were going to be a good performer. And that didn't feel very good, so I set out to find a solution. I tried over 130 different assessments, and we finally settled on Personalysis and used it for a while. But nothing we could find anywhere helped us put a right person in a right seat more effectively than was being done with the more subjective interviewing and trying to make a judgment of another human being and giving them a shot at a job. And Gallup says that only about 24% of American workers are engaged in their work. And we've done studies now with over 360 companies and many hundreds of top performer profiles, and have proven that the Wilfredo Pareto principle is alive and well everywhere, that the top 20% of all the performers in all the positions create more than 80% of the value in that position. And by my judgment and from my perspective of the turnaround management, that means somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the people are in the wrong seat. They shouldn't be in the job that they are in. That's why they are not performing very well. It's not because they're a bad person or because they have low talent, etc. I set out to create the CBI. I collected a bunch of words and phrases from some people I had been doing adult education with. And after a year, I had just my study was wallpapered with words and phrases, and I was trying to see a pattern there. And I was frustrated, but on a given Saturday morning, I finally realized I had 4 core values. I had 4 catalytic values. I'll explain what that means in a little bit. And I had conflict styles, learning styles. The entire spectrum came to be. And then we set out to validate it over time. And we now have been validated as the most repeat score reliable instrument ever created, greater than 94% repeat score accuracy, and that's year over year and decade over decade, not just within the same 90 days. And because of that, we also then know that we're the only instrument that can legitimately claim to be measuring what Maslow called the innate, unchanging nature of the person. So the most reliable instrument, looking at the innate, unchanging nature of the person, we believe is a new foundation for the psychology of being that Maslow talked about. Instead of fixing psychological problems, we help a person uncover and learn who they are and become a fully actualized version of that innate self. And that also is the part of the person we want to put in the right job. So that has been my work, and then I began employing that in all of my turnaround projects, and now in hundreds of different corporations, large and small. And we are forever transforming the way people relate to their job, causing companies to be more profitable and more productive than they believe to be possible when we start with them. And I want to show you what that is all about now. So here is the Core Value Index, and it is up to us what we call a universal mission of all people. The first part of that is to learn who we are. And the best version of who we are is this innate, unchanging nature, which now we know is comprised of 4 discrete core value energies, of which we have varying capacities, making us a unique human being. So it's important to know who you are. The second thing that we think is important to know is what you are, and that is your skills, talents, capabilities, the Homo sapien creature, including the adaptive personality. And the who we are then is the energy that we contribute to society through the talents and capabilities and skills in what we are, our physical self, including our type of thinking and our brain, our size, our dexterity, our skills, our aptitudes. All of those things are delivery systems for the human energy that you are. And we are all here also for some unknown quantity of time. So the universal mission of all people is to learn who I am and be an authentic version of that, to optimize the skills and talents of what I am so that my skills and talents are an optimal delivery system for my human energy, and that is all meant to cause me to make my highest and best contribution as long as I am here on the planet. So in short form, learn who we are, optimize what we are so we can deliver who we are to society and make our highest and best contribution as long as we're here. That, we believe, is the universal mission of all people. And then it's important to realize that all of us have different core value energies and a different set of capacities of these energies, amount of capacity. And this makes us highly individual. As individual as we are physically one from the other. And the instrument is simple. Those of you who have taken the CVI have learned that you can take it in less than 10 minutes, and that the process of taking it is very easy. But the reality is that the likelihood that you and I would choose the same 72 words out of the Core Value Index is 10 octillion to 1. Or 129 million times the population of the Earth squared to 1. In other words, it's not going to happen. You and I are highly unique as individuals. And then we land on the planet with our parents, who are also highly unique as individuals, but we're completely dependent on them for our survival first, and then for our acceptance and approval, and then for the chance to make a contribution. What happens is, since we're so dependent on them as a child, the human infant is more dependent for a longer period of time than any other creature on the planet. Because this is the case, one of our greatest skills is to learn to adapt ourselves to the environment we're born into, which means we warp ourselves into a more accommodating, more likable, more accepted presence. And this is how we develop our ego-driven personality. We consider that personality part of the creature adapted self and not part of our real nature. So we warp ourselves to please our parents. Then what happens is we notice that when people are put into a job where their core value nature is not expressed naturally through the daily tasks of their job, they begin to fail. They may not fail, as Mashburn said, for the first 3 weeks or 6 months, but eventually start failing, and in failing, not wanting to be seen as a failure, they end up redesigning their position. In redesigning their position, they disrupt everyone else in the company and cause other people to have to shift and change their design of their position because somebody is not doing something that was expected in another position, and now I have to make up for that. This is the way companies are designed in the main, and this is why most companies, as we've proven, operate at less than 33% human resources efficiency. In other words, most companies have more than 3 times the number of people they need if they only had every person in the right seat, if every person in every important seat were an A or B performer. And after a person disrupts for a while and is still not happy with the job, then many people leave. And turnover in companies with more than 1,000 employees usually exceeds 30% per year, and it's one of the most costly things that happens. Not to mention, as this lady on the screen looks, the demoralization, the dehumanization, the mythology that says that this person who is not doing an A-level job is a less valuable human being than the people who are top performers in her position, that she must have a bad attitude, she must have a poor work ethic, she must have low skills, and none of those things we have proven are usually true. That if we move a person from a job where they're not performing well into a job across the hall and down the aisle, even a job that they've never considered taking before, but it's the tasks of the job are aligned to their essential, innate, core value nature, that person will become an A or B player overnight, very fast, in other words, and suddenly everyone sees that this person is not a D-level human being. This person is a high-quality human being who for many years has been in a wrong seat. This is the artifice of the Industrial Revolution that we want to completely change, and we call it the Better Work-Life Revolution, driven by the Core Values Index and the Taylor Protocol that puts every person in the right seat. Let's go to the core value profile itself, and I'm going to drive through this rather rapidly because I'm trying to do here what we normally do in about 3 hours with executives out on the Vistage Trail. But this also is an example of what we believe is the best practice first session that most good executive coaching should begin with, most counseling should begin with, most life coaching should begin with. It is an exploration of who you are as a person and what are your wired-in life challenges, and that, we believe, is the most important fundamental knowledge that we need to convey to another human being and get them started on their pathway to full self-actualization and to their place of highest and best contribution, where they can find fulfillment and meaning and high personal self-esteem. So let's start then with the 4 core values. We're going to move past the builder, merchant, innovator, and banker because those are just labels we chose for the quadrants. So some businesses that weren't ready to talk about love and power and wisdom, it gives them a place to to meet the CVI. But we're going to talk about power, love, wisdom, and knowledge. The 4 essential human core value energies that every person has some capacity to be anytime they choose to be that energy. Let's start with power. Power, let's talk about what power is not. Power is not about control. All 4 core values have their own positive and negative control energies. Power is not about forcing people to do things. It's not about overpowering. It's not about any kind of intimidation. Power is the intuitive knowledge, the gut instinct that I know what to do, and my willingness to take an action and get a result, or to invest my personal energy to create or make a positive difference. That's power. The intuitive energy to make a positive difference and take an action while other people are talking about it, thinking about it, doing research about it. The power person is taking action and getting a result. And what we have then is every core value has its catalytic value, or a screen through which the person looks to say, is this a good time, situation, group of people where I should come and be the presence of power for the benefit of this group. And that catalytic value for power is faith. Faith in my intuition that I do know what to do now. I will know what to do next, trust that that's okay, faith that it's going to work out, and faith that my power to make the difference, to make a positive contribution is sufficient. As long as that faith is healthy, then the power of my power energy flows into the room and makes a positive contribution. What happens is that sometimes we're thwarted, people resist, sometimes I've made too many mistakes because my gut instincts have been wrong occasionally, and I start doubting, I start not having faith in myself, and what I do is I escalate. I try to be even more powerful and just drive through, and what happens is I start getting anxious that maybe this is not a good place to be the power in the room. This is the first clear understanding of what we call the real human operating system, the core value nature at play in the person at the conscious and unconscious level. Having ignored the anxiety, which as a child was sufficient to cause me to shift out of power into love, wisdom, or knowledge, having ignored that and tried to escalate higher power, I finally proved to myself something that I most fear. The deepest fear, and I would encourage you to write this down, it is a fundamental understanding of human nature. The deepest fear of every person is that I am not my strongest core value energy, or I'm the opposite of that energy. So my deepest fear, if I'm a power person, is that I am impotent. I am weak, without power. I am vulnerable. And that feeling of being vulnerable, weak, and impotent for a power-based person is not tolerable, unacceptable. And it causes the person to shift into a deep fear that they don't have any power in them. So we shift into a childlike pretense that I am powerful, which is intimidation. Instead of being the positive contributory energy of power, I shift into intimidation to take and get what I want, overpowering people, doing all the things I said that power is not. So that's a good explanation of the power-based human operating system. I won't go to the same detail with the other energies, but you'll see them follow the same format, and you'll understand how each of the core values then work internally. The next energy is love, and we need to be careful about defining love here too, just like we did with power. We're not talking about sexual attraction. We're not talking about romantic infatuation. We're not talking about being always nicey nice and lovey-dovey and all smiles and positive attitude. We're not talking about being a doormat, being boundaryless and taking care of other people's feelings. None of those are love. Those are social interactions and social niceties that many, many people use. Love is the executive coaching activity of wanting to learn who the person really is and work toward an inspired vision with them of what can be created by nurturing the core values in oneself and in another. It's the commitment to learn who the other person is so that you can encourage them, invite them, nurture them, honor them by expecting them to become a fully actualized presence of love in the room, of who they really are. So that's the energy love, and the catalytic value is truth. If I do not believe that you are showing me the truth about yourself, there is no way I can love you because I can't see who you are. If I cannot trust you, if I do not trust you to respect and honor who I really am, I will not tell you the truth about me. Therefore, you cannot love me because you can't see who I really am. Love requires both persons both tell and represent the truth, and that they trust that the truth is being given to them by the other. Then love can transpire between the two people. When a person starts feeling a doubting of this trust, can't trust the other person, can't believe that they can see them clearly, they try even harder to encourage, to cajole, to smile, to nurture, but I am not listening to the anxiety that maybe this is not a good place to be the love in this situation. And in doing that, I cross from anxiety into my deepest fear as a love-based person, which is what? What is the deepest fear of a love-based person? That there is no love in me, that I am not love, that I am a hateful person. I am filled with hate. And what is happening when I experience this fear is I am feeling no love for the other person, no love coming toward me, and not a whole lot of love for myself because I don't like feeling the way I'm feeling. So what I do is I shift into manipulation, which is pretending to be an all-loving, wonderful person who is more loving than the person who is causing all this problem for me. And I have moved into the taking and getting mode out of the contribution of love into trying to be seen as a loving person, taking and getting attention and approval from others. I know this one well, by the way. I'm a merchant first, so I was pretty screwed up when I was 17 years old. I was what I would call an approval suck. I would do anything. I would perform anything in order to get somebody to drop a nickel in my little monkey cup on the sidewalk. I was performing, and in doing that, I would get attention and praise. But I knew at the deep core that nobody was really loving me. They were just applauding for my performance, and that is not what I was looking for. So this manipulation by a love-based person caused the same emptiness and the same lack of performance as the intimidation of a power-based person. Wisdom. Let's approach wisdom a slightly different way. When a wisdom person walks in the room, the first thing a wisdom person does is absolutely nothing. They sit quietly and watch. They stand quietly and watch. They do not engage. They are doing something that Krishnamurti called the highest form of human interaction, which is to observe something until you understand it. And that is what wisdom does. Observes things until they understand the way things are. And as they understand the way things are, they have to remain compassionate toward other people and themselves. If they don't, they begin feeling angry or hostile or other things, or they try to take an action and fix things. Well, as soon as they're doing that, they are no longer observing things until they understand them, so they have ruined their chance to be wisdom in the room. So a wisdom person must stay compassionate and empathetic toward others in order to finally get to a place where they have a wise solution, a wise strategy to deliver to people. That is my role in life. That's why I exist as a wisdom person. What happens is we start losing that compassion for others, or we start feeling no compassion from others, to allowing us to have enough time to come to wise solutions, trying to make us make decisions more quickly than we know is wise. I begin to be afraid that actually I am a fool. My deepest fear is that I'm not wisdom. I am a fool. I'm an unwise person. And what happens when I experience that is I take all of my practiced, learned activities and behaviors that have caused me to learn to evolve and create wise responses, and I turn that into interrogative questioning meant to tear the other person down and to show them to be a fool. I make them look like a fool instead of me, and I am shifted totally now into taking and getting approval and praise for being so smart and so much more wise than these other people who now look foolish. And I am not contributing wisdom. I am not being wise. I am in the interrogation mode, trying to tear other people down. And finally, the knowledge a person knows the facts. They know it through research, measurement, proof, and records. They also know the standard best practices. They know the standard processes, and they work to never waste anything, to conserve all of important resources, and to be the provider of information to the team when they need it to make better decisions and to take better actions. And knowledge is catalyzed by justice, and a knowledge person can prove when there has been injustice. There is no equity of access or accountability. There's imbalance of compensation. There's people that take my knowledge and don't read it, don't study it, don't understand what it says, don't make a better decision, don't take a better action, don't get a better result because of my knowledge. That is unjust. It's a waste of my life and time, and I tend to then shift into my sense of anxiety. Maybe this isn't a good place to be knowledge in the room. And after a while, I become fearful that maybe my knowledge is inadequate. Maybe I don't know anything important. Maybe I'm ignorant about what really needs to happen here. That fear that I am ignorant and not knowledgeable is not tolerable, so I become aloof. I disappear within myself and am not available to other people. And in that process, I'm judging the people around me not to be worthy of my participation. I go to aloof judgment and shift into my way of taking and getting instead of contributing my wonderful knowledge. So those are the 4 core values. We each have a different amount of those. I'm going to show you how that works in a minute. But we also want to see how those 4 core values then cause us to, as Maslow said, be predisposed to make a certain kind of contribution in a certain way. So we have learned that power plus knowledge is a practical contribution. Power is big burst energy, and knowledge is steady, repetitive, constant standard work without waste. In either case, they're creating something practical, tangible, measurable, and real, tangible, measurable results. On the other side is love plus wisdom, which is love seeing a vision of the way things can be, and wisdom figuring out how to make it happen. And we're not talking about being a good artist or a photographer. We're talking about being committed to the constant process of finding a better way to cause change that makes better interaction, better solutions, better activity, better performance. And we're always trying to change things. If you put a practical person in a creative seat, you get exactly what you deserve, a person who keeps doing the same thing over and over again but does it very well. If you put a creative person in a practical seat, you get exactly what you deserve. They're not doing the same way at the same time, the same thing in the same way at the same time. They are constantly wanting to change it and destroying the productivity in the process. And then we get intuitive versus cognitive. Power plus love is intuitive. The more intuitive I am, the less cognitive. Knowledge and wisdom are mostly cognitive. Again, intuition is making snap decisions without thinking about it, and cognitive is being rational and having to think about everything and making sure that they're right. And you can see how in some jobs the intuitive energy is more important than cognitive and vice versa. And then we get the final combination, which is independent versus community. Power focused by wisdom, figure out what to do, then do it, is an independent activity that needs no outside counsel or help and no reporting. I'm just figuring it out and doing, figuring it out and doing. The community opposite energy is having a vision of how good things can be if we all learn to work together. The knowledge of standard best practices, of good, just rules and organization processes, so that I have a community that is a safe and wonderful place for great people to make a great contribution. So those are the 6 types of contribution. And then I want to share with you, this is where we end our first best practice coaching session, with what we call the ladder. And the ladder is just another way to show the relative amount of capacity I have for the 4 different core value energies. So we chart those core value energies onto the ladder about where they belong, and we can now see that my love energy is down under 11 points at 10, while my wisdom energy is getting close to profound energy at 24. And I also can very quickly compute the gap, the difference between the amount of capacity I have to be the wisdom in the room and the amount of capacity I have to be the knowledge in the room. And we have learned that every 3 points of difference between a dominant and secondary core value, or secondary and third level core value, Every 3 points difference causes an order of magnitude greater preference for the higher scoring core value, and a greater difficulty of being willing to shift to the lower core value energy, and a greater difficulty of staying with that lower core value energy long enough to make a real contribution. So now you're going to see what happens between a dominant core value energy at 24 wisdom and 17 points of power. That's 7-point gap, which is 2 orders of magnitude change. And if you're like me, by the time I was 45 years old, I could not shift out of my 23-point love energy into my 18-point power energy and do so gracefully. I only knew how to intimidate and browbeat and shame and blame others with what was meant to be positive power. And in my turnaround management work, when I began asking myself the life question, is this a time for power, and began responding and saying, yes, it is, and becoming power, I moved from a guy who could manage 1 or 2 small businesses toward a little bit of safety and room to a CEO that could manage 8 to 12 companies at the same time with thousands of employees, and dramatically increasing the productivity, performance, and profitability of the company, and putting them on a course of future success for long periods to come. It was an enormous shift for me, and the CBI taught me that about myself. Having created it, it began teaching me and forming my life in a better way. That's the power of the CBI, and it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce you to the Core Value Index and show you something that I think can be the most provocative tool in the toolkit of any coach anywhere. Shannon, you want to pick it up from there?
Yes, thanks, Lynn. So what I thought I'd do is tell you a little bit about a little more of my experience coaching individuals, and then also how I've used it with team development work. And then I thought we might just check in and see if any of you have any questions before we turn it back over to Lynn to walk through how he's also used it to really help companies in their hiring, and what you can do if you're interested in becoming if you're interested in going through the certification process. So first, kind of working as an individual coach, I have been working with the CVI for about a year now. I'll give you a couple of examples of where we've seen shifts with this work. So for example, there was a female partner at one of the big 4 accounting firms who lost a leadership promotion to a male rival. She was so upset at the loss and how it was handled that she ended up seriously damaging her own brand as she repeatedly went to management and other key stakeholders, pitching her case and sharing her disappointment. Now, if you look at her CVI profile, she was a merchant 30, so very relationship oriented. She was a builder 19, so that's the combination of relationship, love and power. Her innovator was an 18, and then her banker was a 5. So to help, what we were able to do is help her see how her profound merchant was driving behaviors of playing a victim and being perceived as trying to manipulate the situation and the people around a decision that was already set in stone. So helping her to shift more to her innovator, wisdom, as her core value focus, to develop objectivity and practical solutions to grow her business and region. By doing that, and with her strong builder kind of supporting that, she was able to turn her attention more to managing results versus manipulating the relationships. And now a year later, she's impressing and gaining respect from the leadership in the region again, and to the point where they're investing in her again, and her region, her business, with both more people and more resources. One that I can share that is a little closer to home from Microsoft, without sharing the name, is an individual whose coaching goal was to communicate better verbally to executives. And the CVI tool helped him to identify where he was not meeting the needs of all the parties. So just being conscious of the fact that he's strong in areas but needed to improve in others, and he has a different style than others. So he used his information so that he could craft better presentations with very specific kind of high-stakes presentations and discussions, And his delivery ended up being so impactful because he changed his presentation mode that he directly got his COO of Microsoft to taking action on the issue, the key issue that he wanted to take action on. So those are a couple of individual examples. So the key here is quite often for individuals is they will have one or two dominant energies. They have a much weaker energy that might be 11 or under, and then they have an energy either in the second or third place that is less integrated, but there's usually quite a bit of power there. They haven't really, and when I say power, not in the power of the builder sense, but they haven't tapped into it. They don't know how to utilize it. They haven't integrated it because they're overutilizing usually their most dominant. And when you can help them tap into that, just as Lynn indicated, he was able to actually impact his capacity by figuring out how to use his energy that he wasn't integrating as well to be able to get more things done. Likewise, I have probably somewhat similar profile to Lynn myself. I'm a very strong merchant. A lot of people who go into the coaching field, from my experience, are very strong merchants. I'm a merchant innovator with Builder Third. And for me, it has been over, it's given me a lot of insight into, for example, my time at Microsoft when I was leading a team of 50 people. And, you know, one of the things I struggled with and then had to really work on to get good at was I would manage a lot by consensus. And I did so because I wanted everybody to be happy, because I'm very relationship oriented. And it felt less comfortable for me to step in and take action. And I think because I am such a profound merchant, eventually I learned that I had to do that. I had to just make decisions and be okay with it. But I would usually then tell people, hey, this is something where I'm going to make a decision solely on my own. This is where I'm going to make a decision with some of your input, and this is where we're going to have a discussion and make a decision collectively. I felt that I needed them to know the rules so that we could still be in a harmonious relationship, but it gave me permission to step into more of my power in those moments. I wish I had had the core values index understanding at that time, because I think it would have enabled me to do that without feeling like I needed to take care of everybody in the process. But having that information now enables me in my own coaching with others to help them see where, you know, it's very easy when you hear their stories where they could have tapped into another energy and gotten a different result, or a better result, or a result that they got more effectively and efficiently. Now, I do also a lot of work in the area of team development. So I work with teams of anywhere from, you know, 5 people up to 30+ people. And how I've used it with those teams is to go in and, again, do very similar to what Lynn just did. You know, I have everybody take the CVI, then we go through a debrief, and then we spend time on whatever the key issues are for that team. Usually there will be an element around conflict, about how they can address conflict more effectively, and just having that awareness that people's styles are different is useful. But I find this different. Most people will tell me they have done insights or DISC or something else, and they will say this is very different than that, because you're getting at that underlying human operating system. You're getting better insight to people and what drives their behaviors. I've also been able to work with teams in terms of then raising conflict, but how to have that conversation. If you're a strong builder and you're having conflict with somebody who's a strong merchant, how do you have that conversation? How do you speak their language when you're in conflict with them? What do you tap into that would be, what might trigger them, and how could you tap into getting them more on board with your idea by simply thinking about the things that might be important to them? I mean, I know you guys have probably done work that's similar to that. I've just found personally that the CVI has been more impactful in doing that kind of work. So those are a couple of ways that I've used it both individually and with teams. So I thought you would be interested in that. And at this point in time, I thought we might just do a quick check-in, Marshall, on if we have any questions that might be in queue, or asking if people have any questions on the phone, if they would like to raise those now, just about the instrument and how it can be used in coaching, before we transition into how it can be used kind of in hiring and what it's like to be in a value-added relationship partnership with Taylor Protocols.
Yes, that's an excellent idea, Shannon. Thank you. So yeah, let's check for questions. I don't see any right now, but I'd encourage you to kind of think about a question or either around the core value index or the application thereof, as Shannon and Lynn have really teed up, I think, quite nicely for us. I suspect if I could, though, while we're waiting to see if there is some questions, give people some time to collect their thoughts. I was thinking of a question myself, so let me just put that out there if that's okay.
Great.
And yeah, so Lynn, as you were describing the innovator, in particular, the innovator wisdom quadrant, so to speak, I was thinking of a person that I'm coaching right now, and I was thinking, I guess, about the the fear domain or the anxiety domain, I believe, as you mentioned. So, wisdom person, maybe fear is being the fool or foolish, and then if and when that's happening, it sounds like that person kind of lashes out to have almost a ridicule response and try and make others feel either less important or kind of this lash out mode. If I got that right, and I was listening with
Yes,
everything
I
you were
think you
saying.
got it pretty well.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the question then, if I have that right, sounds like I've got it about right, is I don't see this behavior all the time. So I guess I'm curious in a comment of sometimes I see this behavior, but not all the time. But when it comes out, it's pretty brutal. Frankly, it's actually disruptive and more than disruptive to the team at large. So I was just
Okay.
interested in why that might come or go like that.
Well, there are two sides of that, Marshall. That's good observation, and the first is I would give to anybody who is a high wisdom person. We have seen that the wisdom person is the person who's most likely to be abused, and abused, not just physical or sexual abuse I'm talking about, but to have their boundaries crossed, to not be treated the way they want, because there's such a high requirement that they stay silent and quiet and just observe and stay empathetic even when other people are being inappropriate. And so what happens when they finally do react, sometimes they've waited too long and they come out with a real rage or real anger. And even when they're that way, a high wisdom person tries not to look foolish. So there's an undercurrent of kind of meanness sometimes that is, you can feel that they just really want to lash out and make you look like a fool. It's a terrific defensive strategy. So what we try to teach wisdom people to do is not identify with their ideas and not be afraid of having somebody disagree with their thinking or their process. And the first sign that I'm starting to feel foolish, I shift into love, power, or knowledge, and become that energy, which causes me to kind of diffuse the situation until I can come back to it again and start engaging in a wisdom mode. So wisdom people may be in a rage, but as my old partner would do, you couldn't see he was in a rage even by the tone of his voice, but his ears would turn bright red. And he was just a profound wisdom person, and that was his way of doing battle. And then he'd ask a question that was meant to just cut the other person to the quick.
Gotcha.
Did that help?
Yeah, that helped a lot, and perhaps sparked the question. I see Ceylon has a question in Asia. I assume he's in Singapore with us today, but let me see if I can unmute. There you go, and see if you can ask your question directly.
Thank you, Marshall.
Sure.
Lynn and Shannon, I'm Silwan from Singapore. I have a question concerning values. To what extent have Asians participated in Lynn's research and study? I ask this question because I believe and have observed Asians have key values which are quite different from Caucasians. For example, Asians being influenced by sages like Confucius and Lao Tzu attach a lot of weight to relationship, respect, and saving face. So these three values are extremely important in Asia. Hence the question to Lynn as to whether Asians have participated in his research and studies. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a very thoughtful question. I appreciate it. The answer is yes. We have 530,000 people now that have taken the CBI, and more than 100,000 of those people were involved in companies that we were in for anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. So we got a lot of interaction with all different kinds of people. We have a fairly normal spread of Asians. They're Asian American, but most of the Asians I'm talking about we're still highly enculturated in their language and in their home. The Asian culture was still very much there. We've had a reasonable social balance of women and men, and African American and Hispanic, and Russian and Ukrainian, and the list goes on. And we can find no place where the core value index is wrongly discriminating, or where it doesn't get a feedback from the people saying, this is the best picture of me I've ever had. And most important, when those people take the core value index a second or third time over a period of several years, they get essentially the same score. We have to be careful in what we call values. We're talking about core value energy. It's better just to think of it as an energy of being, which is being the presence of love or wisdom. And some of the things that you referred to, like relationships, that definitely is a love-based energy. I don't think, quite frankly, that the Asian community is a lot different than a lot of the American community in terms of the fact they value relationship. It's just that some of the ways they look at social interrelationships are different. They have different social mores, but the value of the relationship itself is extremely important. There are things like saving face, and those tend to be kind of enculturations, but a graceful Asian will still not become egotistically involved. They will simply do things to keep out of a situation where they might lose face. But I find a lot of executives and leaders in America are very tuned to losing face, to be embarrassed in public, and tend to act very strongly against that. So our experience is not that everybody is the same, but that everybody appears to have some unique balance of the 4 core values. A last observation simply would be that I expect in my dotage to do a lot of studies of nationalities with the CBI, and I expect to find that Asian communities are a little more practical and relational, whereas the American population, I believe, will turn out to be more independent and creative, intuitive, and the Asian more cognitive. So I think we'll see that there are some changes of the relative balance of these energies in different races, but this does not mean that we can't put people in the right seat, because it still is the right energy to do the right work that's most important, and there's plenty of jobs for everybody in the world if we all find a place to make our highest and best contribution. So that is a long answer to a very precise question, but the complexity, as you appreciate, is greater than just this little conversation can go after.
So, no, thank you. C. Leon, is that okay with you? Did you get some good contrast and insight on that one?
May I just make one comment on
Sure.
Lynn's comment?
Sure.
Lynn, I think I'm very happy to hear you're mentioning that Asians participated in your studies. However, I have noted the generation of Asian Americans is very important, because I think if it's a first generation Asian American, they tend to think, act, and feel like Asians. but by the time it becomes a third generation Asian Americans, they think and act like Americans. So I'm curious to know to what extent the first generation participate.
We've had quite a few of first and second generation, and have not noticed that. I think what we have to watch out for is when we say they begin thinking and acting like Americans. Yes, that is what I would call enculturation, but that doesn't change the core human energy that the person is. And we've had lots of experience that show that we are getting at this innate, unchanging nature of energy that a person is, and we don't have a really good definition sometimes for exactly what is the difference between behavior and the sense of being, the presence of an energy. I think that's what we're wrestling with here, and it'll take more kind of learning on your part, and then feeding back together with people like myself to see if you can discern for yourself the difference between, I think, enculturated behavioral patterns versus what happens when a person becomes the presence of a core value, and that sets the agenda for what they want to do at a given moment. So again, everything you're asking and pushing on is very appropriate and difficult to get into without a lot more conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Lynn, I just want, this is Shannon, I just wanted to say one thing about it. I was kind of curious myself along those lines. Could, much like our parents, so we're born with a unique set of, kind of a unique formula of our core values, and our parents have their own. Likewise, our cultures has its own. But our parents and our experiences kind of warp that away, so we learn how to fit into where we and learn how to succeed, to get whatever we need in that first environment. Couldn't culture do much the same thing?
Well, yes, I would say culture, in a large part, is exactly that. It is a social, intentional warping of children into behaving in a way that the parents are comfortable for their children to behave. So that's why it's so difficult sometimes for us to really understand the difference between what we call cultural values, which tend to be observations of behaviors, versus what we're talking about, which is an essential human energy that has a certain nature to it. And when we shift into being the presence of power or love, it really doesn't matter what culture we're in. We might express it slightly differently in our behaviors, but the motivation is to be the presence of power, love, wisdom, or knowledge, and to contribute that energy for the good of the people around us. That is what we see as the universal human response, and the mission of us all is to make a good contribution that makes us feel worthwhile and helpful and appreciated by our community. We find that to be the most common human condition, is the desire to make a positive contribution.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And see, Leon, thank you for your comments and questions. We have two others. So Sharon and Lynn, I'd propose we go right to the next couple of questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that would be great. I think we should definitely leave, if we have more questions, make sure that we leave at least 10 minutes near the end.
Okay.
So that we can talk about how it's been used in hiring for companies, and also how people can go about the process of becoming certified and what it's like to be a certified CVI practitioner, because I find it quite different than being certified in other instruments.
Okay, so let's at least get. I see we have Paul Barton has a question. Paul, I'm going to unmute you in a second, see if you want to articulate. You have a couple of questions on the screen, and I see Michael, you have a question. So let's see. Paul was first, so Paul, let me unmute you, and Paul, if you want to ask your question or questions, that would probably be great if you could.
Thanks, Marshall. I might go to the second one because I think that one's the more interesting of the two.
Sure.
Which is The concept of neuroplasticity, which is coming out of neuroscience, which I also have a great interest in, Shannon, is how do you see that one fitting? How does it sit alongside the CBI?
So can you hear me, Paul? I just unmuted myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you fine. Yep.
So neuroplasticity, as I understand it, is the ability to basically reroute your neural pathways. And so correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not as familiar with it or as schooled in it as you probably are. But the ability.
That's how I understand it. Yes, definitely. It's the fact that we are rewiring our brains constantly, all the time.
Well, you know what I think from. I think this is an excellent question. I think when I listen to what Lynn talks about, and the way I explain it to my clients is, we begin with a unique kind of, almost our unique fingerprint, our thumbprint of what our core values are. We shift that over time. We're either completely aligned with our parents, which is unlikely, or we aren't, which is more typical. None of us are exactly alike. But most of us as children want to feel safe, want approval, want recognition, etc., and we begin to shift our behaviors over time to align with what we receive recognition for. And that's the warping that occurs. So, you would see some of those neural pathways being created as we learn to adopt behaviors that are more successful for us. However, likewise, there does come a point in time. Now, I have been a coach for many years. I have been coached for many years. And, I have learned to become more aligned. One of the reasons I loved the work that I did at Microsoft. It was very aligned with what I did, but it wasn't perfectly aligned. It was very aligned with my purpose, but not perfectly aligned. And that's why I left, was so that I could move more of my work into social enterprise work. But I look at that particular shift and I think how I have become more of what I would call my authentic self over the past 20 years, being able to step more into who I truly am and to show up as my authentic self. And that, to a certain extent, is a little bit of my rewiring then. How do I actually show up in specific situations? So I had a way that I was born. I learned a different way to behave, to be successful, and then I had to come back to who am I really and how will I be authentically. But in the process of that also, I have over time, and maybe this was a bit of a warping effect, I have overutilized some of my core values. And I had to go back and look for where are some opportunities, what am I missing? And so for me it was the power element. I am missing that. And that honestly, I'll be very candid, had to do with, part of my shunning the power was that the word power even in and of itself was very charged for me. So I saw abuse of power. I saw a lot of the intimidation, both personally and professionally, that Lynn has described, and so I shied away from it. Going through the Core Values Index, being able to see how power is actually, gosh, every time I step up in my own intuition and make the right move, take the right action, that's a good thing. That's making a healthy contribution to my team. That feels great now. And I've been able to really change my mindset around it and to own that. So I think that when we go back to the neuroplasticity, there was a little bit of, I had to, again, practice some new behaviors, think about things differently, because my behaviors had become so ingrained. And so, that doesn't happen overnight, as we know in coaching. People have to practice for an extended period of time to create new habits. I don't know. That's how I would answer it. I don't know. Does that make sense to you? And I would like to hear if Lynn has anything he would add to that.
Yeah, let me add just a thought to that. I think that's great conversation. We have learned that there are 5 wake-up calls. The anxiety, fear is a wake-up call. It says you should become conscious now, and instead of following an impulse that comes from this neurological pathways that have been kind of bored into us through years of practice and same response and feeling a requirement to have to respond in certain ways out of fear, what we do is ask an adult Homo sapien creature to become an adult human being and decide which of the 4 core value energies to be. And this is not so much re-gauging a neural pathway and changing it. It is diffusing an old emotionally almost addictive pathway we've learned to trust and deciding to be an authentic presence at the moment. The other wake-up calls are inner talking, where we're doing self-justification within our mind of what we should have said and why that person was being inappropriate. It's all negative emotions. You cannot be a presence of one of the core values of positive core value energies if you're having a negative emotion, and it's things like desire and giving into a sense of need is again moving out of contributing a positive core value energy into taking care of yourself or trying to get what you want. So I see it as 2 different aspects. When you're talking about neural pathways and plasticity and things like that, I believe you're talking about ingrained, emotionally backed behaviors and behavioral patterns and emotional patterns. And what I've learned is that the core value index, with an ability to shift from one understood core value to a different core value energy, diffuses that, and actually, unless a person is quite psychotic or psychologically very, very sick, that an adult Homo sapien can dramatically change who they choose to be in a situation, and by shifting into a different core value, that causes a behavioral change because you have a different reason for participating in that moment. So that would apply to just about every behavioral change motivation strategy, is that the shifting into being the presence of one of the core value energies is a new understanding of what the adult Homo sapien is able to, how we're able to master our presence and stay in the contributing mode in situations where right now each of us kind of get surprised and shift out and get into that taking and getting child ego-driven behavior mode. Almost always backed by negative emotions.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. That's great, and a really good discussion there. So we have Michael and Jennifer's popped up with some really good question in the dialogue box, but I'm also interested in time as well. So do you want to try and take one more question and perhaps limit it, and then take the next balance of time to talk about the next topic, Shannon, you wanted to talk about, and we take Jennifer's question at the end?
Sure, take one more.
Okay, why don't we do that? This is a great question. So, Michael, I'm going to unmute you if you're okay with that, and let's see if we can get your question live. Thanks. Can you hear us? Michael, are you there? Well, I guess that didn't work. So let me try and summarize the question really quickly. And you may have touched on some of this. There's kind of 3 parts here, but just we'll have to try and take a relatively quick answer on this. How is one's core value set? Are we born with it? Is one kind of vein of the question. And in the case where we use the term value, quote unquote, does this mean the person's motivation? So I guess, like, how is it set? Are we born with it? And then the little definition of term around value.
What was that last one? How does it what?
How does value relate to a person's motivation? Is that related to the value definition?
The first part of the question is we don't have any way of saying absolutely that a person is born with their values. What we do have is the highest repeat score reliability of any instrument. You cannot have a high repeat score reliability if you don't have an accurate instrument. And if you have an accurate instrument and get essentially the same score, you must be measuring something that is essentially not changing or changing very much. So that is what we have. we have done this CVI and gotten the feedback that this is really me from people who were in their 80s and 90s. And we've also done studies with people who were 7, 8, 9 years old on their parents' laps, and children at 5th grade reading level are able to work through the CVI by hitting the question marks. And we've had many of those people that were 11, 12, 13 years old take the instrument again 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, and gotten essentially the same score. So we believe the evidence points backward to say this appears to be an essentially unchanging nature that came into the person at some point and does not appear to be an environmental thing. It appears to be an innate nature. So we stand our ground on that as the likely reality that it is what we're born with.
Okay.
As to the value, yes, we started out with core value and held on to that because it does describe the fact that this is the energy the person is motivated to be the most often, or we actually change that to say they have the highest capacity to be that energy. Therefore, it is most natural for them to use that energy. They become most comfortable with it. So it is the predominant way they choose to interact and make a contribution. So yes, the core value is the core driver that says this is the way I want to be, this is the way I want to contribute, and this is the framework, the energy that I would choose to govern my response to the current situation.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Sounds wonderful. We've had some really incredible questions. We have one more from Jennifer, but again, let's hold that till the end and manage our time. So Jennifer, you could hang out with us till the end, and so I'll hand back to Shannon, to you, and to Lynn to go to the next little bit.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Those were great questions and really nice participation. And thank you very much, Shannon, for your leading that as well, and Marshall. Let's go to just a brief understanding of our employment pre-selection sciences. This is all based upon the core value index. But first, we're studying the typical performance bell curve. Gallup said that we have only 24% of the people engaged in work. Pareto said that 20% of the people produce 80% of the value, and we have proven with our studies that this is indeed the case. 140,000 people in hundreds of different jobs, and we've gotten the employers to grade them with the most objective measures possible on their performance only. And we've proven that a small number of people at the top of performance are A and B performers, and they tend to produce 80% or more of the value created by the entire team. So that creates the first left-hand side of this bell curve, and starts out with a small number of A and B people, a lot of C and D performers, and we've proven that by using our employment pre-selection sciences, a top performer profile created for a job based upon core value, energy, and nature, that we, in a year's time, can consistently double and triple the number of B performers and A performers, so that now a smaller number of people are creating even more value. If the Wilfredo-Pareto principle is real, which we have proven that it seems to be, then this 20% of the people producing 80% of the value, if we double the number of people doing that, we then increase the productivity of the whole team, moving it from 80% to 80% times 2 to 80% times 3, and this is a 240% then of the same value, or of the value of the team being created by 60% of the total population. It is a tremendous change and uplifting of performance output, productive output, by putting right people in right seat. And this is available everywhere as an improvement of business performance and human productivity. This is how we develop a top performer profile. We work with the client managers to decide what are the metrics we're going to use. after we get a great job description that we do in a very, very highly scripted way. We decide what metrics will categorize a person as A, B, C, D performers. And then the algorithm is put together by taking first all the core value index scores of all the A players. We have CVIs of all these other people, but we develop an average core value profile of the A players. That is by the bright orange band here on your screen, and then the highest point of each value is in the blue dots in the shaded area. So we get the highest score and the lowest score in 4 core values and 6 types of contribution. And then what the algorithm does is compares this score to all the people who are B level performers and their core value scores, and sees how many of those people would fall within these boundaries and be reselected, how many C performers have a similar score to the A people, and how many D performers. And our studies have shown that we would rehire somewhere in the neighborhood of 94% of all the people that have been hired in all those positions. The algorithm would rehire and cause them to hire the same A players again, while we would not find a majority of the C and D players pass through and encouraged to be hired for the job. So it's an internal validation that shows us that we know how to hire more A and B performers. Then we did a validation study, a longitudinal validation study in hundreds of companies over 2 or 3 years each, showing that we can double and triple the number of A and B players. And by doing that, we increase the productivity and the productive output of the team. Instead of being 33% ineffective or 33% effective in human capital expense, we have a smaller number of people producing a much higher amount of productive output, making the company more profitable and the people more productive than is believed to be possible when we start. Having done that, we then believed that we had a hiring solution, but realized we had to change the hiring process. So here on the left side of the screen, you see that you get a whole bunch of candidates in, do some applicant screening and resume throwing out, and you end up with a smaller group of people that go through phone interviews, first interviews, second interviews, and then you end up with some favorites. And by Gallup standards, by HR Magazine saying that 85% of all hires are somewhat or significantly disappointing to both the employee and employer, we know that most of the hiring is not done right, that we hire the wrong person most of the time. That is the only way you can end up with the Wilfredo Pareto principle being alive and well in all those positions. So we had to change the hiring methodology, having the only instrument that measures the innate unchanging nature of the person, having the pattern recognition, pattern matching algorithms that are medical grade algorithms to find the right balance of core value energies as a pattern in the A players. We can push the front end of the hiring process. Now all the people who apply for the job in a given company, in a given position, are passed, their CVI scores are passed through this filter, and we find the people who are wired like the A players in that position, and we hire the best of those people by experience and skills, and we guarantee that you'll hire only A and B players every time, and we are true with that. We've placed more than 8,000 people. We've only had 5 warranties called in 15 years. And then what we do is we want to not only put people in the right place because it honors them and gives them a chance to be fulfilled and feel meaningful and to be a good contributor, but also because it increases the capacity of the company of people to perform at a higher level and to be a reduced cost of labor and HR resources for a higher capacity, which makes us more competitive with the rest of the world. This also means, however, that when we look at one job, we end up with some people that should not have been hired for that position. So now we have the top performer profiles done for multiple positions in the company, and when some people need to be terminated from this job, we're able to pass them their core value scores through these other job position profiles, and reposition people where their core value nature is more closely aligned to the work of the job. That optimizes your current workforce. Then when you have a candidate pool of people coming in, you advertise for a senior sales representative, and you get a whole bunch of people applying for that. Some of the people get hired for that job, but those that don't get hired for that job, that aren't suited for that job, all of these people can be passed through the customer service, the order taker at the desk, the regional manager, other positions in sales, and we find that we are able to use use the dollars that are spent in recruiting and finding potential candidates. We're able to put into multiple positions, and so we're far more efficient with our hiring, as well as more effective with our end result. So that is what has created for our clients, which number now in the thousands that we've worked with. They call this the most powerful business tool they've ever found. We break the Wilfredo Pareto principle. We've defeated the human performance bell curve, and we've shown that we can double and triple the number of A and B players in any company in any position, and that by doing that, we make companies more profitable and people more productive than is believed to be possible. This, we believe, is an important aspect of America staying in a highly competitive fashion with the rest of the world, and being able to recoup some things like manufacturing and other things that we've allowed to dissipate from our society. It is a retrenching in a new culture, a new work-life, better work-life revolution that will undo the mythologies of the Industrial Revolution. And now, instead of caring only about skills and talent, we care about who the person really is, and giving that person to make a chance to make their highest and best contribution, which is not only more productive but also more human and honoring of their need to make a positive contribution, to feel meaningful and purposeful in their work. So I thank all of you for participating with us today. The VAR program with Taylor Protocols, the value-added relationship, is to go through 2 days of intensive training, ending with a workshop that helps each person figure out what their place of highest and best contribution is going forward, and the things they need to do to get there. And then Taylor Protocols and all of our team become your senior executive coaches, trying to lift you to your place of highest and best contribution. And in your work, working with executives in businesses, if you introduce us to some of your clients, we will help them see the value of using our Taylor Protocols for better hiring and better placement. And we charge good dollars for that, and we give 20% of the revenue generated from first projects, and 10% of all projects thereafter from that same client become the residual, zero cost, zero effort income for our VARs. So it dramatically increases the income because of just introducing us. And then the other thing that happens is, because we're so ROI based, because we create such a heightened profitability and awareness of how to get that profitability, executive coaches often find they can double and triple their rates, increase the number of people in a company that they coach by orders of magnitude. So they increase their revenue for their own services, which we do not participate in, while getting some repeat zero cost, zero effort residual income from introducing us to the clients. It's an amazing partnership between the coaching world and the Taylor Protocols. You become our feet on the street, helping to entrench our services there, and we become the dramatic change agent for a momentary in time, and put in our technology, which can be used for constant improvement for many, many years to come.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to add to that. I know we need to close, but so what I've found in the past year of being in this, going through certification, I went through certification not even thinking about the value-added relationship. Every other certification I've been through, I go, I learn the instrument, I buy the instrument when I want to use it with my clients. That's how it's always worked. So this was a very different experience to then have support, to have marketing materials if I wanted to bring it into my clients, to be able to go back to Lynn and Dan Cox, who works in very close partnership with Lynn, to get additional support on how I can use it with clients, present it to clients, etc. So there's a network then of the value-added relationship partners that are working with Taylor Protocols that support each other, which has been very nice and very, like I said, very different, because usually you go through the certification and then, good luck to you in using this, the tool on your own. So over the past year, I've had quite a bit of interaction with both Lynn and Dan in order to support my own coaching experience. In fact, Lynn has done some master classes for some of the value-added relationship partners because we wanted to go deep in certain aspects of the model. So that's been really nice too, and he does this all in his own time, which we really appreciate. So that's really what we wanted to share with you. I know that you guys are probably excited about the tool. It really can be very impactful in your businesses as coaches. And Marshall, I know that we are at time, but I was going to say if anybody wanted to stay on and wanted to ask that one last question, I'd be happy, and I'm sure Lynn would, to take it.
Well, yeah. Let me say big thanks to Shannon, to you, and to Lynn. This is really a delightful session, informative, useful, practical, and intriguing. Those are all the top words that come to mind. But I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I think based on the questions from the coaches, it was high value and high interest as well, all around. So thank you. We still do have this question from Jennifer. She's given us permission, so to speak, to kind of not ask it now. And the basis of her question is probably going to be a long answer. So can I ask Lynn and Shannon, if I were to send you this question, could we email a response to Jennifer perhaps over the next day or two? Would that be okay?
Oh, certainly.
Sure.
And just make sure you identify from the coach source
Yes.
in the headline there, Marshall, and say a question from presentation, and I'll watch for it. And I'm sure Shannon would give it a shot as well. So we'll both respond. And by the way, part of our process is if anybody who wants to get a CVI to give to a family member, to a spouse, to somebody that we really respect, in order to get their reaction to it, we provide those at no cost. And we want you to openly explore with us, and we want to invite you to become, we have 375 value-added relationships with people around the world, growing at the rate of 10 or 15 a month these days. So we want to invite you to become part of this amazing workforce that is becoming empowered by the instrument that shows the innate, unchanging nature of people, and is becoming the recognized foundation of the psychology of being that Maslow pointed to many years ago. And I just finished a study got today that our repeat score reliability is actually greater than what I've been saying at the 94%, but I'm going to let you be surprised by that when we publish our new white paper with all 5 of our major research studies. We plan to put up the little signal flyer here and let people know where we are, because the CVI has truly established a remarkable position in the world, and we want everybody to know how effective it's proving itself to be in interpersonal life, in self-actualization, and in optimizing businesses and the people in every seat in the business to reach their highest and best contribution.
Great. That sounds wonderful, and it is wonderful, and sounds like a bit of intrigue there. So that's a good way to end. So we'll have to get a little bit of suspense on what the number has gone. Sounds like up above 94. So again, Lynn, thank you very much, and Shannon, thank you very much. And we'll say goodbye, good day to everybody now. And of course, the recording will be up on our website for future reference. And we'll go from there. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. And
thank you, Marshall.
You're more than welcome.
Shannon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get some sun.